In the depths of an unknown mountain range, Yang Yi was lying on a huge smooth rock with his eyes closed. He'd fallen unconscious. A dense forest was on his left, and a lake was on his right. There was a waterfall at the end of the lake. Water was pouring down the mountain peak into the lake, causing water to spray incessantly towards the surroundings. Qian Kong was by Yang Ye's side. At this moment her gaze was on him. As she gazed at him, Qian Kong's face was completely calm and emotionless, but tempestuous waves were surging through her heart. Yang Yi had killed the master of the Slayer Pavilion, an existence that she had to look up to in the past. She'd been in the Slayer Pavilion for countless years, but she'd never acted because she was very clearly aware of the strength that the master possessed. Yet now he was dead. He died at the hands of this man before her who was only a quasi-emperor. She'd watched the entire battle. Yang Ye's strength was clearly weaker than the master of Slayer Pavilion, but he'd won in the end. Why? Because Yang Yi was ruthless. He was ruthless to his enemies, but even more ruthless to himself. There was an even more important point, and it was that he was unafraid of death. At the end of the battle, when the master of Slayer Pavilion fought Yang Yi to the death, he'd actually fallen into a disadvantaged situation. Not only was he disadvantaged when it came to his aura, even his mental state was similarly in a disadvantaged position. Because he'd been forced to fight Yang Yi to the death, but Yang Yi was doing it on his own accord. Was there a difference? Of course there was. At the very least, the master of Slayer Pavilion had lost to Yang Yi when it came to the aura and presence they possessed. Moreover, because he hadn't wanted to put his life on the line, he had qualms in his heart. Since there were qualms in his heart, he naturally carried apprehension when he attacked. That was why Yang Yi had gradually gained the upper hand in the end. At the end, the master of Slayer Pavilion had understood that principle and started to risk his life against Yang Yi. But it was too late. Actually, Yang Ye's strength was much weaker to the Slayer Pavilion's master. That was beyond doubt. However, strength wasn't the only thing that decided the outcome of a battle. There were various other aspects. There were too many incidents throughout history where the few defeated the many, or the weak defeated the strong. Qian Kong had quite a bit of admiration for Yang Yi. She could imagine that if Yang Yi didn't die early and was able to continue growing, then he would definitely not be inferior to Jian Wuji. Qian Kong restrained her thoughts and sized up Yang Yi. Yang Ye's injuries were very serious, extremely serious. Could be said that it was a miracle that he'd been able to survive such injuries. Save Yang Yi? She didn't have such a thought. At the very least, she didn't have such a thought right now. She just wanted to get her soul back right now. And Yang Ye's unconscious state was an opportunity for her. She walked over to Yang Ye's side and squatted down, and then she placed her right palm against Yang Ye's stomach. Because those strands of soul belonged to her, it didn't take long for her to notice where they were within Yang Ye's body. She didn't hesitate to release a suction force from the center of her palm, and those two strands of soul within Yang Ye's body seemed like they'd heard her summons. They instantly shook violently and intended to charge out of Yang Ye's body. Qian Kong was delighted when she noticed this. However, the tiny vortex within Yang Yi suddenly spun, and then the two strands of soul instantly fell silent. They didn't react at all no matter how Qian Kong summoned them. She frowned. What's going on? She tried a few more times, but the strands of her soul didn't react at all. Qian Kong remained silent for a long time before her face gradually turned icy cold. A dagger appeared in her grasp, and she pressed it against Yang Ye's stomach. Obviously, she intended to cut Yang Ye's stomach open. Suddenly, Yang Ye's voice resounded by her ears. My body is very strong. You have to use a bit more force to cut through it. Qian Kong's dagger trembled slightly, and then she turned to look at Yang Yi. At this moment he'd opened his eyes, and he was looking at her. Their gazes met for a few breaths of time before Qian Kong put her dagger away. She stood up and said, I was going to help treat you. Since you've woken up, then do it yourself. Treat me? Yang Yi glanced at her. He naturally didn't believe that nonsense. If he'd woken up just a moment later, then she would have probably cut him open. Meanwhile, she suddenly said, Since you've woken up and are safe, Then it's time to return my soul to me. Yang Yi shook his head decisively. No! Her face fell while killing intent flashed through her eyes. I've saved you and brought you here. What else do you want? Yang Yi replied. You wanted to kill me just now, right? Qian Longkong's reply was very frank. Yes. Yang Yi said, see. My injuries are so serious, so I can't fight back against you at all. If I return your soul to you, you'll definitely end my life right away. Right? She gazed at him for a long time before she said, What do you want? It's very simple. Yang Yi continued. I'll return your soul once I've recovered, and I guarantee that I won't go back on my word. Are you kidding? She suddenly squatted down and looked him in the eyes. Can you even recover without spending around 15 days of time and consuming natural treasures? How will you even recover? I'm telling you that I'm not going to protect you for that long. One day, Yang Yi said, protect me for a day. Regardless of whether I've recovered after a day passes, I'll still return your soul to you. All right? Qian Longkong asked. One day? Are you sure? Yang Yi replied, I am. She gazed at him for a long time before she said, All right, I'll protect you for another day. Yang Yi said, Give me violet crystals. She glanced at him before flipped her palm, and then over 100 violet crystals appeared by Yang Ye's side. Yang Yi said, Feed them to me. Qian Longkong's gaze became extremely hostile. Don't try to reach for a yard when given an inch. Yang Yi replied, Just look at me. Can I move? He wasn't lying. His profound energy had dried up during the battle, and he'd fallen unconscious in the end. So his injuries hadn't been healed at all. Not only had they not been healed, they even showed signs of growing worse. Qian Longkong glanced at him while her chest rose and fell. Obviously, she was furious. In the end, she picked up the violet crystals and brought them near Yang Ye's mouth, because she knew that if Yang Yi didn't recover a little, he would definitely not return her soul to her. Yang Yi didn't hesitate at all. He opened his mouth and ate them. As soon as the violet crystals entered his stomach, the tiny vortex started to spin, and it didn't take long for the spirit energy released by the violet crystals to be absorbed by the tiny vortex. In the end, threads of violet energy seeped out from the tiny vortex. As soon as the violet energy appeared, Yang Ye's body was like a land covered in drought that finally received a good rain, and it instantly absorbed all the violet energy. Meanwhile, Qian Longkong was in charge of feeding violet crystals to him. Of course, just eating them wasn't sufficient. The violet crystals around Yang Yi started to be ignited, and they transformed into spirit energy that surged into Yang Yi. Yang Yi asked, Miss Qian, you've taken your revenge. So what do you plan to do after this? She glanced indifferently at him and said, Does that have anything to do with you? Yang Yi thought for a moment and said, Miss Qian, you're a voider now, and you can be considered as one of the strongest in this world. I'd like to know if you think your strength is capable of breaking through the restrictions in the sky to leave for the outside world. Qian Longkong brought a violet crystal to Yang Ye's mouth while she asked, What are you trying to say? Yang Yi swallowed the violet crystal before he said, You can't break through the restrictions around this world, but I can. How laughable. Even a wisp of ridicule arose on the corners of her mouth. She was about to say something, but it didn't take long for the ridicule on her mouth to freeze. In the end, it vanished slowly, and the words she was about to speak had stopped abruptly. Since Dark Hell Continent suffered that calamity, countless experts had tried to break open the restrictions and head to the outside world. However, none had succeeded after so many years. So, when Yang Yi said that he could, her first reaction was that it was laughable. After all, even countless voiders hadn't been able to succeed. So how could Yang Yi possibly succeed? But it didn't take long for her to suddenly think of something, and it was that Yang Yi was just a quasi-emperor right now. Even if he couldn't accomplish it now, what about in the future? What about when he'd attained the Emperor realm? If he failed at the Emperor realm, then what about when he attained the Voider realm? When she thought up to this point, she glanced at him but didn't say a word. Yang Yi continued, Miss Qian, this world is a cage. Who does it imprison? Actually, it imprisons voiders like you. Why? Because saints and emperors can still advance in this world, and they can continuously improve their strength and increase their lifespan. But what about all of you? Can all of you improve continuously? No. This world doesn't tolerate your existence, nor can it afford to support all of you. If all of you want to attain more breakthroughs, then you must head to the outside world. Am I right? We can't leave, and you may not be able to leave as well. As she spoke, she fed another violet crystal to Yang Yi. Yang Yi swallowed the violet crystal before he looked her in the eyes. All of you are definitely unable to leave, but I have a chance. Chen Lankong's hand that was moving towards Yang Ye's mouth had suddenly stopped. She gazed at him for a long time before she stuffed the violet crystal in his mouth and said, "Eat. Eat your fill and quickly return my soul." Yang Ye's face darkened. After all that effort, I just wasted my breath for nothing. However, Yang Yi had no intention to give up just like that. She was a voider and an assassin. If he could obtain her assistance, then their joint forces could even kill ordinary voiders in an instant. However, she clearly didn't have a good impression of him, and it would be quite difficult to make her join the Sword Alliance sincerely. Yang Yi thought for a long time before he said, "Miss Qian, I sincerely invite you to join the Sword Alliance." She was a smart person, so tricks were useless against her. Thus, Yang Yi had decided to be straightforward. Chen Lankong glanced at him and said, "Even though you killed the Pavilion Master, there's the Yuan clan, the Yi clan, and various other powers from the Veiled region. Their joint forces are capable of casually dispatching 10 voiders. So tell me, how many voiders does your Sword Alliance have? As far as I know, it doesn't even have one. Join your Sword Alliance? You're asking me to give my life away." When she spoke up to this point, she tossed a violet crystal into his mouth and continued, "I wouldn't join your Sword Alliance even if it has the ability to fight them." Yang Yi swallowed the violet crystal and felt puzzled as he asked, "Why?" Chen Lankong asked, "You really want to know?" Yang Yi nodded. She looked him in the eyes and said, "Because I can't stand the sight of you." Yang Yi was speechless. She can't stand the sight of me? Yang Yi was stunned for quite a while before he recovered from his shock and said, "Why?" Chen Lankong spoke indifferently. "There's no reason. In short, I won't join your Sword Alliance. Return my soul once you've recovered, and then we'll go on our separate paths." "Do you not want to leave this place?" asked Yang Yi. He was slightly reluctant to give up. "No one doesn't want to leave." Chen Lankong continued, "I believe that you have a very good chance to leave this place." Yang Yi was puzzled. "Then why aren't you willing to join the Sword Alliance?" She glanced indifferently at him and said, "I don't want to become the sword in another's hand again, and I don't want to obey the orders of others anymore. Now I just want to live for myself. Understand?" Yang Yi fell silent. He felt that this was probably the reason why she refused to join the Sword Alliance. It made sense because no one was willing to become the sword in another's hand. She'd obeyed the Slayer Pavilion's master and been his sword for the sake of taking revenge. Yet now, she'd gotten her revenge, so she clearly didn't want to go on living a life where she had to obey the orders of another. When he thought up to this point, Yang Yi nodded, "I understand." Chen Lankong didn't speak further, and she just picked up another violet crystal and brought it to Yang Ye's mouth. Suddenly, both their expressions changed because the space above them was suddenly torn open, and then a palm emerged from within it. In the end, that palm slammed down in their direction. Chen Lankong's eyes narrowed slightly. The dagger in her hand transformed into a ray of white light that shot up into the sky. It was extremely swift and instantly collided with the palm. Bang! A rumbling explosion resounded, and then countless waves of energy swept towards the surroundings, causing space to ripple incessantly. "Let's go!" Chen Lankong pulled Yang Yi up and placed him on her back before she vanished on the spot. "Where do you think you're going?" A voice resounded from where Yang Yi and Chen Lankong had just vanished, and then an emaciated hand suddenly emerged from the spatial rift and grabbed at them. The palm carried an extremely powerful suction force that caused both Yang Yi and Chen Lankong to instantly slow down. A wisp of ferocity flashed through Chen Lankong's eyes. She twisted her palm slightly, causing the spacer behind her to warp, and the suction force instantly vanished. Meanwhile, she seized the opportunity to enter the space before her. They'd just vanished when a gray-robed old man appeared here, and then Yiming and the others arrived just a little while later. Yiming asked in a low voice, "Was that the female assassin from the Slayer Pavilion?" Senior Yuan's eyes narrowed slightly. "Yang Yi is heavily injured, and she's protecting him. How could that be possible?" Yiming was shocked. How could she possibly be with Yang Yi? Could it be that Yang Yi and the Master of Slayer Pavilion came to some sort of agreement? The Slayer Pavilion is siding with Yang Yi. The others' expressions changed when they heard this, because it would be a problem if the Slayer Pavilion had sided with Yang Yi. Yang Yi himself was extremely terrifying, and if the Slayer Pavilion assisted Yang Yi from the shadows, then not to mention killing Yang Yi, even their own survival would be a problem. After all, while they had the numbers, the Slayer Pavilion wouldn't fight them head-on. The Slayer Pavilion would catch them off guard and assassinate them. All of them gazed at Senior Yuan. Senior Yuan spoke solemnly. "This incident is quite strange. The Slayer Pavilion is an organization that upholds certain principles, so it wouldn't change sides easily. In short, let's ignore that for now and pursue them. If that woman continues to protect Yang Yi, then we'll kill her as well." As soon as he finished speaking, Senior Yuan's figure vanished on the spot. The others hurriedly followed after him. Over 100,000 kilometers away, Qian Lankong was dashing madly with Yang Yi on her back. Even though Yang Yi had some profound energy within him now, it wasn't enough. Because the injuries he'd suffered were truly too heavy. It could be said that his entire body was covered in injuries, and there wasn't a single part of him that remained whole, including the insides of his body. These injuries required at least 40 or 50% of his profound energy to heal, but it would take at least 4 to 6 hours to recover that much profound energy. Yet now, the thing he lacked the most was time. Qian Lankong suddenly said, "Are you very happy now?" Yang Yi asked, "What do you mean?" She replied, "They noticed us together and I even saved you. Now, they'll definitely think that we're on the same side. You've succeeded at dragging me down, so shouldn't you be happy? If we're on the same side, then we are." Yang Yi continued, "Miss Qian, don't worry. I'll join forces with you and annihilate them once I've healed." "Shut your mouth!" Qian Lankong roared with fury. "Yang Yi, don't even dream of making me work for you. In any case, no matter what state you're in after a day, you have to return my soul. Otherwise, we can just die together. If you think I dare not do that, then you can try me." Yang Yi sighed softly. "Miss Qian, I don't want you to work for me. I just think that since they've considered you to be their enemy, it's beneficial for us to work together against them. Right?" She grunted coldly. "It's beneficial to me? Leave this world? How laughable. Leaving this world is just a pie you're drawn out for us to see. It can be seen but can't be eaten. Yet we have to work ourselves to the bone for you while waiting. We have to kill for you and obey your orders. What a great plan." Yang Yi fell silent for a short while before he said, "How about we do it in another way? We can still work together. Help me and raise your conditions for doing so. All right?" "No," she continued. "As I've said before, we'll go our separate ways after the day passes." Yang Yi remained silent for a long time before he nodded. "Since you've made your decision, then I won't speak further. You should have done that from the beginning." She grunted coldly and sped up. Yang Yi didn't waste his breath anymore. He withdrew violet crystals and continued swallowing them. Presently, the important matter at hand for him was to recover as soon as possible. Yang Yi suddenly asked, "Why have they been able to locate us?" Even though he hadn't concealed his aura with the sword domain, Qian Lankong had used the laws of space to isolate their auras. Logically speaking, they shouldn't have been found, because Qian Lankong's ability to isolate aura was extremely formidable. After all, he wouldn't have been able to locate her without the sword domain. Don't look down on anyone, especially those from the veiled region. Qian Lankong spoke solemnly. That old man Yuan as well. He's a true living fossil, so he naturally has a huge number of abilities. Moreover, there are 7 of them and all of them are voiders. So long as they will it, they can cover a massive area within their divine sense. We just have to make a slight mistake, and they might find us right away. Not to mention that the previous battle caused quite a commotion. Xianxia thought for a moment and said, "Right. So do you have any plans now?" Qianlan Kong. "I'll just flee with you until tomorrow, and then you and I will flee on our own." Xianxia was speechless. She hadn't been lying. She really did flee incessantly with Xianxia on her back. Obviously, she really intended to go her separate ways with Xianxia once their agreement was over. Xianxia shook his head and didn't say anything. A forced cooperation didn't last. Since she really didn't want to cooperate with him, then it was pointless to continue speaking. Qianlan Kong dashed madly with Xianxia on her back. Even though her ability in concealment was good, she'd almost been stopped by Senior Yuan's group on many occasions. Fortunately, they got out of it without being dragged into any battle. Xiangxia's injuries were healing rapidly. At this point, he'd recovered by almost 40%. However, there was no profound energy within him because he'd used all his profound energy to recover. So, he was still being carried by Qianlan Kong. It couldn't be helped. His speed was much inferior when compared to her. After another 10 hours passed, Xiangxia's injuries were almost completely healed. Now, he was mainly recovering his profound energy, because he'd used all his profound energy to heal his injuries, so there wasn't a drop of profound energy left within him. Qianlan Kong spoke solemnly. "They are getting closer." Xianxia replied, 2 hours. "Give me 2 hours." Qianlan Kong fell silent for a short, while before she said, "Your injuries are healed?" Xianxia didn't conceal it and said, "Almost." As soon as he finished speaking, he clearly sensed her delicate figure tremble. A short while passed before she asked, "Do you possess the undying physique of legend?" "No," Xianxia continued. "My profound energy is just special, and that's why I heal so quickly." Qianlan Kong nodded slightly. "So that's why." They didn't speak further. Just like that, 2 hours passed and Qianlan Kong stopped. Xianxia was very self-aware. His figure flashed and appeared in front of her. Qianlan Kong gazed silently at Xianxia. Xianxia didn't say anything unnecessary. He just waves his right hand and 2 strands of soul appeared before Qianlan Kong. She couldn't help but glance at him when she saw him return her soul so readily. But she didn't say anything. She just waved her hand, and the 2 strands of her soul instantly entered her body. Qianlan Kong immediately seemed even more spirited. She took a deep breath before she gazed at Xianxia. "See you." "No, I hope we never meet again." As soon as she finished speaking, she didn't stay a moment longer and immediately vanished on the spot. Xianxia shrugged. Suddenly, he turned to look towards the distance, and then he pondered deeply for a moment before vanishing on the spot. Xianxia had just vanished on the spot when a ray of light flashed through where he'd been standing, and then another 5 rays of light flashed through successively. A little while later, Xianxia appeared there once more. Now, he didn't just have the laws of space, he had the sword domain as well. So, the combined concealment effect of them made even Qianlan Kong's ability in concealment to be inferior to him. So, those experts from the Veiled region hadn't noticed him. Xianxia looked up towards the distance, and then he frowned, because they were heading in the direction that Qianlan Kong had vanished towards. He hesitated for a moment before following soundlessly behind them. "Old man Yuan, why are all of you chasing after me instead of Xianxia?" Qianlan Kong gazed at Senior Yuan's group and spoke in a low voice. She had stopped fleeing when she noticed that they hadn't gone after Xianxia and were pursuing her instead, because she felt that she had to explain that she had nothing to do with Xianxia. She didn't want to become a public enemy of the Veiled region, nor did she want to be pursued by so many voiders. Senior Yuan's gaze descended onto Qianlan Kong, and his eyes were calm. "There's something I don't understand. Why did you help Xianxia?" "I truly can't figure that out," she replied. "I have nothing to do with him anymore." Senior Yuan said. "Nothing to do with him? Haha. Then why did you risk your life to save him? Your Slayer Pavilion has always enjoyed a good reputation in the Veiled region, but not only have you failed to fulfill your promise, you even changed sides and helped the person we hired you to kill. Isn't that not right?" Qian Lonkong fell silent for a short while. It was the pavilion master's order. If you have questions, you can look for him. They didn't know that the master of Slayer Pavilion was dead, so she could push it all to him. Besides that, she could use him to deter them. The master of Slayer Pavilion? Senior Yuan chuckled. I'm really curious, truly curious indeed. What exactly did Yang Yi use to actually make your Slayer Pavilion give up on its principles and reputation to help him? Qian Lonkong replied, That has nothing to do with me. Now, I have nothing to do with him as well. If you want to kill him, then feel free to do so. My Slayer Pavilion won't help him again. Senior Yuan gazed at her for a short while before he ordered, Kill her! Yi Ming and the others were slightly stunned. Obviously, they hadn't expected him to give such an order, but it didn't take long for them to come to an understanding. The Slayer Pavilion had always been a threat to them, and it had openly assisted Yang Yi now. That was undoubtedly no different than looking down on them and treating them as its enemy. Since the Slayer Pavilion had chosen to be their enemy, then they would naturally not hold back. The Slayer Pavilion had lost a voider, so if they killed the woman, it would only have one voider left. At that time, the Slayer Pavilion's threat towards them would definitely be much smaller. As for what she said about the Slayer Pavilion not helping Yang Yi anymore, they naturally didn't believe her, and they didn't dare believe her as well. What if the Slayer Pavilion stabbed them in the back one day? That would be a nightmare to them. They naturally didn't hesitate. An arrow suddenly tore through the air towards Qian Lonkong, and it was so swift that it instantly arrived before her. Fortify! An old man's voice resounded. It didn't take long for 3 old men to act in unison, and the space within 3 kilometers around Qian Lonkong had started to be compacted. They were extremely fearful of the Slayer Pavilion's concealment techniques, so they'd immediately fortified the space around her. Because no matter how she concealed herself, so long as they kept her within 3 kilometers, then it would be absolutely impossible for her to vanish without leaving a trace behind. As for fleeing through space, that was impossible. Space that was fortified by 3 voiders wasn't something that any ordinary person could break through with ease. Once the space there was fortified, another old man took a step forward before tapping his finger in her direction. A beam of light instantly shot forward, and its target was naturally Qian Lonkong. Only Senior Yuan hadn't made a move. Qian Lonkong's face became unsightly when she saw them act against her. Obviously, she hadn't expected that they would actually refuse to let her go after she'd guaranteed that she had nothing to do with Yang Yi, and that she wouldn't help him again. However, it only took a moment to come to an understanding. They didn't have a good impression of the Slayer Pavilion from the very beginning, so they probably intended to seize this opportunity to kill her and weaken the Slayer Pavilion. A single clan or sect wouldn't dare to act against the Slayer Pavilion, but if all of them were united, then not to mention a single Slayer Pavilion, they wouldn't even fear 2 organizations like the Slayer Pavilion. Qian Lonkong would naturally not stand there idly and wait for death to arrive. A dagger flashed into her grasp, and then she raised it with both hands before swinging it at the arrow. Clang! The arrow was blasted away while Qian Lonkong was pushed backwards. However, her hands didn't stop moving. She still held onto the dagger with both hands as she flicked up upwards. Because a beam of light had arrived in front of her, and an explosion instantly resounded when her dagger struck it. Bang! Qian Lonkong was blasted backwards. However, she'd barely taken a few steps back when her figure seemed like it had collided against a wall, and it stopped her on the spot before a mouthful of blood sprayed from her. She was an assassin. Her ability in concealment and assassination were extremely formidable, but she might be inferior to an ordinary voider when engaging in a head-on battle. But it just so happened that she couldn't conceal herself right now, because the space around her had been fortified. Her attainments in space were sufficient to easily break through the fortification and merge into space if the space here had been fortified by a single voider. However, there were 3 voiders fortifying the space here right now. It was a hopeless situation. She couldn't fight them and she couldn't flee as well. So, it was naturally a hopeless situation. Meanwhile, over a dozen beams of light shot towards her from different directions. At the same time, the auras of 6 voiders smashed down upon her like 100 mountains. A wisp of sadness arose in her eyes. She'd thought that she wouldn't have to live for the sake of others once the master of Slayer Pavilion had been killed, and she wouldn't have to think about revenge anymore as well. She would be free to do anything she pleased. Yet now, the cruel reality before her told her that there was no way out once you enter this world of cultivation. Even though she was clearly aware that she had no chance to survive, Qianlongkong still refused to stand by idly and wait for death to take her. However, her dagger felt extremely heavy while the aura of 6 voiders remained on her. While she could move it, the speed she swung her dagger at was countless times slower than before. Hiss! 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 In an instant, she was enveloped by those beams of light. At the same time, an arrow flashed and entered the area enveloped by beams of light. However, the expressions of everyone here suddenly changed. Meanwhile, Senior Yuan stretched out his hand in Qianlongkong's direction, and then a huge palm flashed forward and grabbed at her. Bang! A wave of terrifying force suddenly swept out from Qianlongkong's position. As soon as it appeared, the auras of those 6 voiders were instantly obliterated, and the beams of light that enveloped Qianlongkong were dispersed. At the same time, a dagger appeared abruptly and stabbed at Senior Yuan's attack. Bang! The dagger was instantly obliterated. Meanwhile, a huge energy fist appeared and slammed against Senior Yuan's attack. Bang! The fist and palm collided, and then a huge explosion resounded. The space in the surroundings shook violently before cracking apart. The Yuan clan? Haha! Yang Yi has joined my Slayer Pavilion, and he has gone to the Veiled region. I advise all of you to head home and look after your own clans and sections. Or you might just go back to a mountain or corpses. A seemingly hoarse voice resounded. It didn't take long for a masked man in black robed to appear before them. However, he only appeared for a moment because the masked man had immediately taken Qianlongkong and entered the expanse of space before him. Senior Yuan and the others' expressions became unsightly. Obviously, they hadn't expected the Slayer Pavilion to really side with Yang Yi and even help Yang Yi against them. After all, the Slayer Pavilion didn't just have assassins at the Voider realm, they had many more assassins at the Emperor and Saint realms. Those assassins weren't a very large threat to them, but those assassins were a huge threat to their clans and sects. Yiming gazed at Senior Yuan. Should we pursue them? Senior Yuan had a gloomy expression on his face, and his gaze was icy cold. He instilled coldness in the hearts of all who looked at him. Senior Yuan remained silent for a long time before he glanced at them, and then he said, Yang Yi can absolutely not be allowed to live, and it's impossible for us to become reconciled with him. I'm sure all of you have no objections to that, right? They nodded to display their agreement. Yang Yi was already capable of posing a threat to them. If he attained the Emperor realm or Voider realm, then how strong would he be? Moreover, they were irreconcilable enemies with Yang Yi now, so even if Yang Yi was willing to be reconciled with them, they wouldn't be willing to do so. Because once they made peace, Yang Yi would definitely grow swiftly. Once he grew and held a grudge against them, then they would have courted death. So, Yang Yi couldn't be allowed to live. Once he saw them nod, Senior Yuan continued, Since you have no objections, then it's easy to deal with. I'm sure you've seen how the Slayer Pavilion has sided with Yang Yi. Yang Yi isn't terrifying right now, but the Slayer Pavilion is an actual threat to us. So, I've decided to eliminate the Slayer Pavilion first and then deal with Yang Yi. What do all of you think? Yiming asked. We're ignoring Yang Yi for now? Senior Yuan spoke in a low voice. We'll deal with the Slayer Pavilion first. Even though Yang Yi was a truly monstrous genius, he wasn't a threat to the Yuan clan for now. But the Slayer Pavilion was a diamond rank power. Moreover, they were all assassins. So, if they focused on targeting the Yuan clan, Senior Yuan didn't dare continue on such a train of thought. I agree. Meanwhile, one of the old men said, No matter how monstrous Yang Yi is, he's just a single person. So long as we crush the Slayer Pavilion, it wouldn't be difficult to deal with Yang Yi. But if we overlook the Slayer Pavilion and target him instead, then we'll suffer heavy losses once those assassins set out to attack us. Senior Yuan nodded. The threat Yang Yi poses is a future threat, but the Slayer Pavilion is a current threat. We must deal with the current threat first. As for Yang Yi, didn't the Slayer Pavilion's master say that Yang Yi has gone to the Veiled region? That's perfect. We'll just trap him and kill him there, and we'll deal with the Slayer Pavilion at the same time as well. As soon as he finished speaking, Senior Yuan waved his right hand. Let's return to the Veiled region. All of them nodded and vanished on the spot with Senior Yuan. At an opening over 100,000 kilometers away, Qian Lankong was lying there on the ground. Her clothes were in rags, and they revealed a huge amount of snow white. There was a golden arrow stuck in her chest. Besides that, there were injuries all over her body. Yang Yi took off the mask and squatted down in front of her. After that, he waved his hand and smiled. You said we would never meet, yet here we are. Are you very surprised? Isn't it a very pleasant surprise? Aren't you extremely happy? Don't you feel very excited? Actually, Yang Yi had hesitated to save her. Because under such circumstances, the slightest mistake wouldn't just cause him to fail. He might lose his life as well. After all, there were 7 voiders there while one was even a living fossil. Such a force was something he couldn't resist right now. But he'd chosen to save her in the end. There had been 2 reasons why he'd taken such a risk to save her. Firstly, it was the principle, an enemy of my enemy is my friend. Those fellows from the Veiled region refused to spare her, and they treated her as their enemy. If he thought about it from that angle, then both of them had a common enemy. Since they had a common enemy, they naturally had a chance to work together. Secondly, it was because he had to divert the attention of those fellows from the Veiled region. If they refused to give up pursuing him, then even if they couldn't catch him, he wouldn't have time to do anything else. He had to create some time and space for himself to breathe. So, he had to divert their attention, but where would he divert their attention to? The Slayer Pavilion, of course. After all, they weren't aware of the Slayer Pavilion's master's death. So, when compared to him, the Slayer Pavilion was a much larger threat to them. He'd succeeded. Qian Lankong stared fixedly at Yang Yi in silence. She naturally wouldn't speak because there was nothing to say. Beg Yang Yi to save her? She wasn't able to make herself do that. When she parted ways with Yang Yi earlier, she'd said that she didn't want to see him again. Yet now they met once more. However, it was in such a way. In short, the emotions she felt were extremely complicated. Yang Yi sized her up. Needless to say, her figure was very good. Moreover, many parts of her body were exposed to the point large patches of snow white could be seen. Especially her faintly visible chest. It was truly visually stunning. When she noticed Yang Yi sizing her up, her face became cold. Have you not seen a woman before? Yang Yi glanced at her and smiled. Miss Qian, you wouldn't mind me removing your clothes, right? She closed her eyes slightly while killing intent flashed within them, and then a dagger appeared in her grasp. Suddenly, Yang Ye's hand pressed down upon her hand, and he smiled. Miss Qian, you're very heavily injured, so it's best not to utilize your profound energy and strength. Otherwise, you'll die. After all, you don't have a body as strong as mine. Qian Lankong's hand was instantly immobilized when Yang Yi pressed down upon it. She gazed at Yang Yi and knew she didn't have the ability to resist him at all. A wisp of ridicule immediately curled up on the corners of her mouth. So what if I mind? Now, not to mention removing my clothes. I wouldn't have a choice even if you want to force yourself on me. Right? Yang Yi gazed at her and smiled. Then I'll be taking it off. You agreed to it. She stared fixedly at him in silence. Yang Yi paid no attention to her, and his gaze descended onto her chest. Needless to say, she was very heavily injured. Especially the arrow in her chest. It was ceaselessly emanating weak waves of energy that were damaging her body. Besides that, there were numerous thumb-sized holes on her stomach and waist. These bloody holes had pierced through her body. In short, she was covered in injuries. Of course, they were far inferior to the injuries he'd previously sustained. Even though voiders could heal themselves, it depended on the injury. If they were injured by voiders, then those injuries weren't something that they could just heal themselves. Yang Ye's gaze fell on the arrow on her chest. It just happened to be at the center of her chest. Because her chest was too huge, the arrow seemed like it was being clamped there. Yang Yi held the arrow and said, It's in the way, so I have to pull it out. You don't have any objections, right? She didn't speak. She just stared at him as if she wanted to kill him with her gaze. I'll take your silence as approval. Yang Yi pulled lightly once he finished speaking. Hiss! A string of blood immediately sprayed out from her chest while the arrow left her body. But she didn't frown at all. She was an assassin. Since she'd been able to attain her current accomplishments, the injuries she'd suffered in the past had been much more severe than these current injuries of hers. Yang Yi tossed the arrow aside, gazed at her and said, I'm going to remove your clothes now. You don't have any objections, right? Qian Lankong spoke angrily. If you want to remove it, then remove it. Why waste your breath? Yang Yi placed his palm on the clothes before her chest and said, Then I'm really removing them. Take it off. Hurry up. Qian Lankong glared at him and was practically shouting, You're just doing a woman. Do you have to be so hesitant and talk so much? Are you a man? Are you even a man? Yang Yi had clearly never expected her to be so agitated, and he was slightly stunned. Once he recovered from his shock, he spoke without thinking, I'm a man, of course. A man? Her face was covered in ridicule. Then why are you so hesitant and talking so much nonsense? If you're a man, then... Hiss! Meanwhile, Yang Yi suddenly swiped his finger over her chest, and the clothes on her chest were instantly sliced open. Those huge peaks instantly bounced out once her clothes were sliced open, and they even shook for a while. It was a rather magnificent sight. Yang Yi gazed at her and shrugged. Now you believe me, right? She just stared at him while her gaze was surprisingly calm. But it didn't take long for her to close her eyes slowly, as if she had accepted her fate. Even though she seemed completely calm on the outside, the blood, profound energy, and dantian within her were silently undergoing fine changes. Time passed slowly, and a short while passed before she frowned, because Yang Yi didn't seem to be doing anything. She opened her eyes and noticed that Yang Yi was looking at her as well. Yang Yi pointed at her chest and said, It's too big. The injury. Qian Lankong interrupted him and spoke coldly. Don't men like you prefer huge ones? You've never touched such a huge pair, right? Go on, you can touch it to your heart's content today. Yang Yi glanced at her and smiled. You're so agreeable. Since that's the case, then I won't hold back. As he spoke, he placed his left hand on her right breast. It was soft, supple, and huge. That was what Yang Yi felt right now. He restrained his thoughts and exerted a little force to move that breast slightly to the left. After that, he tapped his right index finger against the injury at the center of her chest. Violet energy immediately flowed out of his finger and entered her body. Qian Lankong clenched her fists while her eyes closed. She was waiting for a moment to arrive. The blood, remaining profound energy, and dantian within her were moving restlessly. So long as Yang Yi entered her body, then she was completely confident that she could kill him with her. However, that moment didn't come. Conversely, a strand of gentle energy appeared on her chest. Once that energy appeared, she noticed to her astonishment that the damaged internal organs, meridians, and bones within her were actually healing at an alarming rate. What's going on? Qian Lankong frowned and opened her eyes. At this moment, Yang Yi was still staring at her chest, but his eyes were very calm and without a strand of lust. As for the energy that entered her body, it had come from Yang Ye's hand. Qian Lankong was stunned for quite some time before she said, You removed my clothes to heal me? Yang Yi glanced indifferently at her and said, What else? He suddenly opened his eyes wide and continued, Oh my God. You wouldn't have thought that I intended to do that, right? TSK. Such dirty thoughts. You actually had such dirty and foul thoughts. I looked down on you. Yang Yi. I'll kill you. A furious howl resounded like the howl of a wild beast, and it carried a trace of embarrassment and rage. A long time passed before peace returned to the area. As his violet energy healed her, her ghastly pale face had started to grow red, and the heavily injured internal organs, bones, and meridians within her were healing swiftly. She asked, What profound energy is that? She didn't seem to be embarrassed or uncomfortable at all from being completely naked right now. Actually, it was because she'd given up. He'd already touched her, so why would she care about him seeing her body? Xianxia replied, "It's a secret." She glanced at him, fell silent for a long time, and then asked, "Why did you save me?" Xianxia moved his right hand to the bloody hole on her stomach, and then his violet energy surged towards it. However, he didn't move his left hand. Maybe he'd forgotten. Xianxia replied, "Miss Chen, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Now, we have a common enemy. So, I think that we can work together. What do you think?" She looked him in the eyes and asked, "What if I refuse?" Xianxia answered, "That's fine. I can't kill you because of that, right?" Chen Lankong asked, "Is that what you really think?" Xianxia nodded. "All right, then I won't work together with you." Chen Lankong said, "So long as I want to stay hidden, they won't be able to find me." Xianxia glanced at her, fell silent for a long time, and then nodded, "Do as you wish." As he spoke, he moved his right hand to the bloody hole on her waist. She glanced at him and remained silent. After around 15 minutes passed, Xianxia withdrew his right hand. He seemed to have thought of something at this point, and he removed his left hand as well. After that, he withdrew a robe and covered her body. "Miss Chen, the injuries inside and outside of your body have been mostly healed. I have many other things to deal with, so I'll be leaving now." She gazed at him and asked, "Are you trying to play cat and mouse with me?" Xianxia gazed at her and replied, "Miss Chen, I really do want to obtain your help. However, as far as I'm concerned, it wouldn't be the end of the world even if I can't get your help. Understand?" As soon as he finished speaking, Xiangye's figure vanished into the horizon. A few breaths of time later, Xianxia suddenly stopped. He turned around and Chen Lankong instantly appeared behind him. She said, "I have a question." Xianxia said, "Go on." Chen Lankong looked him in the eyes and said, "Actually, you didn't have to remove my clothes in order to heal me, right?" Xianxia felt speechless. Chen Lankong stared at him without blinking as she awaited his answer. Xianxia spoke with surprise. "You came after me just to ask that?" She replied, "Yes." Xianxia suddenly spoke angrily. "Miss Chen, are you doubting my character? Am I a person who would take advantage of another's misfortune? Am I such a—" She interrupted him and said, "Yes." Xianxia was at a loss for words. Chen Lankong walked over to him. They were quite close now to the point they could smell each other's breath. She looked him in the eyes and said, "Since you dare to look and touch, then why don't you dare to admit it?" Xianxia thought for a moment and said, "It wouldn't be easy for profound energy to enter your body while your clothes obstruct the flow. For the sake of speeding up the healing of your injuries, she asked, "But your profound energy can still enter my body even without removing my clothes, right?" He gazed at her for a short while before he said, "Fine. I did it intentionally." He really had done so intentionally, and the reason he did that wasn't because he had perverted thoughts, and it was mainly because he wanted to prank her. After all, she's been putting on airs earlier. So, while he was willing to waste his profound energy on healing her, he couldn't give it to her that easily. That was the reason why all of that had happened. After he finished speaking, Xianxia became vigilant. Because she had a bad temper, so he couldn't guarantee that she wouldn't attack him after finding out that he'd done so on purpose. Chen Lankong gazed at Xianxia for a long time before she said, "At least you're acting like a man now." Xianxia was quite surprised when he noticed that she had no intention to attack him. However, he didn't want to pay any further attention to the matter. So, he immediately said, "Miss Chen, I have many other things to deal with. Farewell." As soon as he finished speaking, Xianxia turned around and walked away. But he'd only walked for a while when he stopped once more because Chen Lankong had followed him. Xianxia gazed at her and asked with a bewildered tone, "What?" She replied, "I'm a very vengeful person. Those old bastards from the Veiled region almost killed me, so how can I not avenge that? I'm willing to work together with you, but it's only temporary. Once we deal with those old bastards, we'll go our separate ways." Xianxia was stunned, and then he was overjoyed. After all, the Sword Alliance lacked help the most, especially the help of experts at the Voider realm. With Chen Lankong's help, while the Sword Alliance's overall strength would still be inferior to the Veiled Dimension, it would still shrink the gap between them. Chen Lankong emphasized, "It's only temporary." "All right, it's temporary." Yang Yi smiled. He understood her character. She was headstrong and didn't like losing face, so he naturally wouldn't argue with her on such trivial matters. Chen Lankong glanced at Yang Yi, who had a smile covering his face, and said, "We have to head to the Veiled region." "Why?" Yang Yi was puzzled. After all, it had been quite difficult to trick those fellows to return to the Veiled region, so wouldn't he be walking into a trap by going there? She said, "The Slayer Pavilion has 3 Voider Realm Assassins, 131 Emperor Realm Assassins, 327 Saint Realm Assassins, and around 1,000 assassins still in training. Yet now, the Master of Slayer Pavilion is dead, and I'm the only remaining Voider of the Slayer Pavilion. Do you understand what I mean?" Yang Ye's eyes lit up, and he spoke with slight excitement. "You're saying that we can seize this opportunity to take control of the Slayer Pavilion?" She nodded. "But I need you to cooperate with me." "Me?" Yang Yi asked. "How?" She said. "Continue pretending to be the master of the Slayer Pavilion. That will work." Yang Yi frowned. The reason he'd been able to trick the others while pretending to be the master of Slayer Pavilion had mainly been because they very rarely came into contact with the Slayer Pavilion's master. But if he were to pretend to be the Slayer Pavilion's master in Slayer Pavilion itself, then it was very likely that he would be exposed. "It will," Chen Lankong continued. "The master rarely comes into contact with others. Moreover, even if he does, he still wears his mask. So, once you wear the mask and coupled with my acknowledgement, would anyone dare to not treat you as the Slayer Pavilion's master?" Yang Yi thought for a moment and nodded. "All right, that's completely possible." His eyes were filled with excitement. After all, if he could gain control over an organization of assassins like the Slayer Pavilion, then the gap between the Sword Alliance and those powers of the Veiled region would shrink once more. Moreover, it would shrink tremendously. Chen Lankong said, "But you have to realize that if you head there, then you might not be able to leave if they join forces and close the barrier around the Veiled region." Yang Yi asked, "It has a barrier?" Chen Lankong nodded. "The continent once suffered a calamity. Divine flames descended from the heavens and ceaselessly destroyed the continent all day and night. For the sake of survival, many Voiders joined forces at that time to create a world, the Veiled region. In order to keep the divine flames out, they joined forces and created a powerful sealing barrier over the entire Veiled region. Recently, the barrier has been deactivated. But if they reseal the Veiled region, then you'll be absolutely incapable of leaving with just the strength you possess right now." Yang Yi thought for a moment, and then he said, "Let's go to the Veiled region." He didn't want to give up on gaining control over the Slayer Pavilion. Chen Lankong glanced at him and nodded. "Then let's go now, because they might have already acted against the Slayer Pavilion." Yang Yi replied, "Wait. I need to refine puppets." Yang Yi spoke solemnly. He had the corpses of 4 Voiders right now, and he naturally couldn't waste them. After all, every single Voider Realm Sword Servant would shrink the gap between his Sword Alliance and the Veiled region. If he was able to possess an almost similar number of Voiders as the Veiled region, then the Sword Alliance would be entirely capable of going head-on against the forces of the Veiled region. Yang Yi didn't waste a moment of time, and he immediately started to refine the Sword Servants. Yang Yi was quite nervous when refining a Voider's corpse for the first time. After all, it wasn't comparable to an Emperor. Fortunately, he was at the Quasi-Emperor realm right now, and his overall strength was numerous times greater than it had been. The first attempt was a failure. The second attempt was still a failure. The third attempt failed as well. The fifth attempt still failed. Just like that, 2 days passed, yet Yang Yi still failed. However, he didn't give up and he just started once more from scratch. After almost 9 days of failing, Yang Yi finally succeeded. Yang Yi took a deep breath, and a smile appeared on his face as he gazed at the Voider Realm Sword Servant before him. Even though it was inferior to a true Voider, the gap wasn't very large. Chen Lankong spoke solemnly. Your puppet refinement technique is extraordinary. Xianxia smiled and said, Actually, there are limitations. My current mental strength is only sufficient to control one more Voider Realm puppet, and my mind would collapse if I tried to control more. If he hadn't advanced to the Quasi-Emperor Realm, then not to mention a Voider Realm Sword Servant, he wouldn't even be able to refine an Emperor Realm Sword Servant. Qianlongkong said, It's still extremely extraordinary. A puppet at the Voider Realm. No one has ever been able to possess a puppet comparable to a Voider. Xianxia grinned and started to refine the second Sword Servant. This time, he used a comparatively shorter amount of time. He used just 4 days to refine it successfully. Just as he'd expected, 2 Voider Realm Sword Servants was his limit, and his mind wouldn't be able to endure another. Xianxia waved his right hand and put the Sword Servants away, and then he said, Let's go take a look at the Veiled Region. Actually, he was going there even if he didn't have a chance to obtain the Slayer Pavilion. However, he wasn't going there to look for trouble, but to rescue Yun Banqing's family. Let's go. As soon as Qianlongkong finished speaking, her figure shot off towards the distance. Xianxia immediately followed her. Both of them were extremely swift, and it only took them a few hours to arrive at the extreme north of the continent. Xianxia looked up and an expanse of snow white filled his vision. Hide yourself, Qianlongkong said. They might have forces watching this place. Xianxia nodded, and then his figure merged into space. Qianlongkong concealed herself as well. Just like that, Xianxia followed behind Qianlongkong and snuck ahead. A short while passed before a crystal blue circle appeared within his field of vision. Xianxia asked, That's the teleportation formation to the Veiled Region? Qianlongkong replied, Change into the Slayer Pavilion's master's clothes, and wear his mask as well. From this moment onward, you're the master of the Slayer Pavilion. Understand? All right. Xianxia changed into the black robe and wore the mask. Tell me some things about the Slayer Pavilion. Right, tell me what I have to pay attention to. It would be troublesome if I'm exposed. Proud and cold. Qianlongkong said, Act proud and cold. Stop laughing and joking. Besides that, act in a dignified manner. But that shouldn't be difficult for you. You're the leader of an alliance, so you naturally have a dignified air. However, you have to emanate it intentionally. Understand? Xianxia asked, What else? She replied, Besides that, you must remember not to utilize your sword or sword intent while acting as the Slayer Pavilion's master. You can only use a dagger. Understand? Of course, replied Xianxia. His strength would be reduced tremendously if he didn't use his sword and sword intent, but it couldn't be helped. His identity would be exposed if he used the sword. That's all. Let's go. As soon as she finished speaking, her figure entered the blue circle of light, and Xianxia quickly followed her in. Once he entered the circle of light, the scene around him instantly changed. At the same time, Xianxia felt dizzy, but it didn't take long for the dizziness to vanish. Xianxia opened his eyes. A blue sky and white clouds. It was a little different than the world in Dark Hell Continent. Especially the spirit energy here, it was very abundant and almost on par with the radiant dimension. Meanwhile, Qianlongkong's voice suddenly resounded in Xiangxia's mind. Shit, there's an ambush here. Xianxia scanned the surroundings, and then his expression instantly changed, because the space around him had been sealed off. Suddenly, a voice resounded. We've been waiting a long time for both of you. As soon as the voice finished resounding through the air, 7 voiders appeared around Xianxia and Qianlongkong. At the same time, 7 terrifying auras pressed down upon them. These 7 voiders were Senior Yuan and the others. An ambush. Xianxia and Qianlongkong couldn't figure out why these fellows were lying in ambush here. Are you very surprised? Senior Yuan spoke coldly. My Yuan clan is watching the area all around the barrier, and my Yuan clan knows every detail about every single person that left or entered. Master of the Slayer Pavilion. I truly don't understand what Xianxia promised you to actually make you not hesitate to go against us in order to help him. Xianxia calmed down when he heard Senior Yuan, because they hadn't seen through his identity and still treated him as the master of Slayer Pavilion. Yang Yi didn't conceal himself and walked out of space with Chen Kong. All of them became vigilant when they saw Yang Yi and Chen Kong. They simply seemed like they were facing a formidable enemy. Even Senior Yuan had vigilance in his eyes. After all, there weren't many in the Veiled region who dared to look down on the Master of Slayer Pavilion. No, it should be said that there weren't many throughout the continent who dared to look down on him. Yang Yi glanced at them and said, "It's naturally something that I can't resist." His voice was hoarse as if he had something in his throat. Yang Yi had naturally done that on purpose. Senior Yuan said, "I'm a little curious." Yang Yi replied, "You really want to know?" Senior Yuan said, "If you don't mind." Yang Yi nodded. "Actually, it's nothing shocking. He just promised to help me advance from the Voider Realm." Advance from the Voider Realm? Senior Yuan and the others' pupils constricted. All of them were Voiders, and what was their lifelong goal? It was to advance, because only then could they increase their lifespan and continue living. If they stopped at the Voider Realm, then they would transform into a pile of dirt in the end. If Yang Yi really had the ability to help others advance from the Voider Realm and attain a higher realm of cultivation, then not to mention the Master of Slayer Pavilion, even many of the others here would be tempted. Actually, it wouldn't just be many but all of them. But was it possible? Did Yang Yi have the ability to accomplish that? Obviously, they felt that it was impossible, because they were very well aware that breaking through from the Voider Realm had to be done in a large world, and it had to be done by obtaining energy that was purer than quintessence violet energy. Did Yang Yi possess energy that was purer than quintessence violet energy? They naturally didn't believe that, but the Master of Slayer Pavilion did. Was he a fool? Of course he wasn't. In other words, Yang Yi might really possess such energy. Many of them weren't able to maintain their composure when they thought up to this point. What a joke! Meanwhile, Senior Yuan suddenly laughed coldly. "Advance from the Voider Realm? Do you think we are fools? Since the continent suffered that calamity, have you ever seen anyone breaking through from the Voider Realm? Yang Yi has the ability to help you advance? How laughable! He's just a quasi-emperor, yet he actually talks nonsense about helping others advance to a higher realm of cultivation than the Voider Realm. The even more laughable part is that the dignified master of the Slayer Pavilion actually believed such nonsense. As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his right hand and said, "Attack!" He'd realized that the situation was turning bad for him when he noticed that the others were tempted. They were from different clans and sects, and they weren't his Yuan clan's subordinates. The reason he could order them was because they had a common enemy. If they were allowed to have other thoughts, then it would be extremely bad for him and the Yuan clan. Of course, the main reason was that he didn't believe Yang Yi could really help someone advance from the Voider Realm. Yi Ming and the others hesitated for a moment and were about to attack. Even though they were curious about how Yang Yi would help him advance, they were still quite doubtful in the depths of their hearts. "I'll prove it to all of you." Suddenly, Yang Yi took a step forward. "I'll prove that he really can do it." Yi Ming and the others stopped simultaneously when they heard Yang Yi. This time, they paid no further attention to Senior Yuan. Obviously, they weren't able to refuse the temptation of advancing from the Voider Realm. Senior Yuan's eyes narrowed slightly while he clenched his fists. However, he didn't attack because even he wanted to see how the Master of the Slayer Pavilion would prove it. Yang Yi said, "Look at my profound energy. He can change my profound energy." As he spoke, the profound energy within Yang Yi surged before he said, "Look carefully at my profound energy. All of you should have the ability to discern how different my profound energy is." As soon as he finished speaking, he flicked a strand of violet energy over towards the area above them. Once it arrived in the air above them, their gazes immediately looked up, and their expressions changed as soon as they laid eyes on that strand of violet energy. Because it was clearly not ordinary profound energy. It wasn't profound energy of the 5 elements, nor was it quintessence violet energy. No, it was much purer than all those types of profound energy, even quintessence violet energy. As they gazed at it, the hands of many had started to tremble. Even Senior Yuan's eyes were filled with shock and a trace of disbelief. Does Yang Yi really possess the ability to help others advance from the voider realm? Such a thought had arisen in all their minds. Suddenly, one of the old men said, "Where are they?" The others recovered from their shock, and their faces became extremely unsightly when they looked towards the position where Yang Yi and Chen Lankong had been standing at, because they were gone now. Senior Yuan spoke with a gloomy expression on his face. "Pursue them!" However, none of them moved, and the gazes of everyone was locked onto that strand of violet energy. Senior Yuan's face grew even more gloomy. He waved his right hand and took the violet energy before he said, "I'll keep it safe for now, and we can study it later. Now let's pursue them first." The others exchanged glances, and then they shot off towards the distance. Senior Yuan glanced at the violet energy in his grasp, and there was a trace of a strange expression in his eyes. The strand of violet energy wasn't quintessence violet energy, yet it was even purer. This world didn't have any energy that was purer than quintessence violet energy. But it did now, and it was in his possession. Yang Yi. Senior Yuan took a deep breath, and he put the violet energy away before vanishing on the spot. Over 100,000 kilometers away, Yang Yi and Chen Lankong dashed forward madly, and their speeds were at their respective limits. Chen Lankong suddenly asked, "Are you really a sword cultivator?" Yang Yi replied, "Of course. Why do you ask that?" She answered, "It's nothing. I just feel that it's quite inconceivable for a sword cultivator to be shameless to such an extent." Yang Ye's face darkened. "What do you mean? That's called being quick-witted," she said. "If you aren't shameless, then why did you take off my clothes?" The corners of Yang Ye's mouth twitched slightly. "That has nothing to do with this, all right? Besides that, I took off your clothes to heal your injuries. In the end, you lived through it, right?" She said. "You're shameless." Yang Yi was speechless. Chen Lankong suddenly asked, "Were you telling the truth earlier?" Yang Yi naturally understood what she meant, and he immediately replied, "What do you think?" Chen Lankong said, "To be honest, I don't believe that you can help someone advance from the voider realm. But your profound energy, it's much purer than quintessence violet energy, and the healing effects of quintessence violet energy is absolutely inferior when compared to your profound energy. Your profound energy is definitely superior to quintessence violet energy. Exactly what type of profound energy is it? Can it really help others advance from the voider realm?" Actually, she'd wanted to ask this question when Yang Yi helped heal her earlier, because his profound energy was too terrifying. Yang Yi glanced at her and said, "Do you really want to know?" She nodded. "Yes." Yang Yi replied, "I'm sorry, but I can't tell you. It's a secret of mine." Besides the people closest to him, he refused to tell anyone else about the primordial pagoda. After all, a man's wealth is his own ruin by arousing greed in others. If others were to find out that he possessed such a precious treasure, the whole world would be his enemy. Chen Lankong asked, "Have you not told anyone?" "I have," Yang Yi said, "but they are the people closest to me." She glanced at him and fell silent. Both of them were extremely swift. Coupled with the fact that Yang Yi was using the sword domain to conceal them, it only took them an hour to shake off Senior Yuan's group. Yang Yi asked, "How many powers are there in the Veiled region?" Chen Lankong explained, "The human race in the Veiled region is comprised of 6 cities, 3 sects, and 1 pavilion. The 6 cities represent 6 clans: the Yuan clan, the Yun clan, the Yi clan, the Li clan, the Lin clan, and the Qin clan. The 3 sects are the High Abyss sect, the Sky Wave sect, and the Limitless sect. As for the pavilion, it's our Slayer pavilion. These are the strongest powers amongst the human race here. Yet now, besides the Lin clan, Skywave, and the Slayer pavilion, all the other clans and sects have joined forces to deal with you and the Slayer pavilion." Yang Yi said, "Why hasn't the Lin clan and Skywave sect joined forces with the Yuan clan?" "I don't know," she continued. "I'll send someone to investigate later." Yang Yi nodded. "Right, what about the demon race?" She fell silent for a short while before she said, "The demon race is on the other side of Heaven Pillar Mountain Range. Heaven Pillar Mountain Range is a powerful barrier that the human race and demon race built together. The demon race can't come over here, and the human race can't go over there. The reason for that was so that the human race and demon race don't fight each other. Because at that time, the continent had just suffered a calamity. So both the human race and demon race had very few members left. Yet now, our human race is multiplied incessantly, and it should be the same for the demon race. Fortunately, Heaven Pillar Mountain Range is there, so we're all living together peacefully. Xianxia suddenly asked, "Do you think the demon race would attack if we destroyed that barrier?" Chen Longkong's eyelids twitched. "Don't do something insane like that," Xianxia said. "I think it's a pretty good plan. If the demon race really does attack, then they wouldn't have time to care about me." Xianxia suddenly became excited when he spoke up to this point. "I think it's completely viable. Let's go destroy that barrier." Chen Longkong was at a loss for words. "Calm down." Chen Longkong obstructed Xianxia's path. "You'll die if you try that right now. Understand?" Xianxia was puzzled. "Why?" She replied, "There are forces guarding the mountain range, the guardians of the human race in the veiled region." "Do you know of the guardians?" Xianxia frowned. "The guardians?" Chen Longkong explained. "The guardians are a clan that the human race jointly fostered all those years ago. It guards Heaven Pillar Mountain Range forever. Firstly, it is to guard the ceiling barrier there, and secondly, it's to defend the human race against the demon race. Even though I don't know how strong they are definitely extremely strong. Because numerous formidable cultivation techniques and combat techniques of the human race were left to that clan. Moreover, there are around 5 divine grade spirit veins there." Xianxia said, "You don't know how strong they are?" She nodded. "Because their ancestors made a solemn oath that the descendants of that clan are prohibited from leaving Heaven Pillar Mountain Range. As for the reason, I don't know. However, I have no doubt that it's extremely strong. At the very least, it isn't inferior to the Yuan clan. Because every few years, the younger generation of the 3 sects and 6 cities would head to Heaven Pillar Mountain Range to challenge the geniuses of that clan. However, they've never won throughout history." Xianxia shook his head. "What a pity." Chen Longkong suddenly walked over to Xianxia, and she looked him in the eyes. "Do you realize that if you destroy the barrier there and the demon race attacks the human race, then our human race will face calamity? Many will die in a war between the races. What does that have to do with me?" Xianxia met her gaze and said, "It's fine so long as the members of my Sword Alliance are alive." She looked at him for a long time before she spoke. "You're too cold-blooded." Xianxia chuckled. "Cold-blooded? All right, I admit it. But let me ask you something. Would you think the people in the Veiled region are cold-blooded if they crush my Sword Alliance? Would you? You wouldn't, right? That's different," she said. "The Sword Alliance and Veiled region both consist of humans. It's a fight between humans. But if you destroy the barrier, you would be drawing the demon race over to slaughter the human race. Such actions are actions against humanity, and they are disgraceful. Because you're a woman. A person can be selfish and cold-blooded, but—" Xianxia waved his hand and interrupted her. "Let me ask you something else. If they have the chance to make the demon race deal with my Sword Alliance, then do you think the Yuan clan and those other powers would give up on such an opportunity? They won't, right? Besides that, if the Slayer Pavilion's master was still alive, and you had the opportunity to make the demon race kill him and take revenge, would you give up on such an opportunity? Would you?" Chen Longkong gazed at him in silence. Xianxia continued, "One shouldn't live by 2 different sets of standards. You can't do it, yet you want others to. Such people are the most disgraceful. Besides that, it doesn't matter if it's the demon race or human race. I treat them all equally. I'm willing to be friends with humans, but I'm also willing to be friends with demons. If the demons want to kill me, then I'll kill them. If the humans want to kill me, then I'll kill them as well. I'm sorry, but I don't have that sense of righteousness to sacrifice myself for the sake of the human race." A wisp of ridicule arose on the corners of her mouth. "If you're selfish, then admit it. Why make it sound like you're so honorable and noble? While both of you are sword cultivators with extraordinary natural talent, your character is much inferior to Senior Jian Wuji." Xianxia gazed at her for a short while and said, You're right. I Yang am a selfish person. But that doesn't have anything to do with you, right? Qian Lankong replied, I'll definitely stop you if you try to destroy the barrier there. Yang Yi replied, if that day really does come, then no one would be able to stop me, including you. They gazed at each other and the atmosphere here became slightly heavy. A short while passed before Yang Yi withdrew his gaze and spoke indifferently. Miss Qian, we're working together. You don't have the right to talk about my character, and I don't have the right to talk about you. Because none of us are noble. Even you are. I don't need you to teach me or ridicule me. As for what you said about stopping me, if that day really comes, then we'll decide it based on our strength. If you're strong, you can kill me. If I'm strong, I'll kill you. It's just that simple. She gazed at him for a short while before she nodded. You're right. Both of us aren't noble, so we don't have the right to talk about each other. But if you really dare to destroy the barrier, then I'll definitely stop you, even if I die. Yang Yi shrugged. I'm willing to exchange my life for the lives of some. But when it comes to many, and especially my enemies, I wouldn't stop no matter how many I have to kill. Qian Lankong took a deep and long glance at him before walking forward. Let's go to Darkness City. The Slayer Pavilion's headquarters is there. We have to recall all the members of the Slayer Pavilion because the Yuan clan and those other powers have already started acting against Darkness City. Yang Yi nodded slightly. You make the decisions for now. As soon as he finished speaking, he hurriedly followed her. Because of what happened earlier, they didn't speak anymore, and it didn't take long for them to arrive at Darkness City. They'd only just entered the city when Yang Yi sensed a few divine senses sweep towards him. Qian Lankong said, It's our own people. This city is in our control, and everyone who enters will be noticed by us. Yang Yi nodded. Qian Lankong led him to an extremely ordinary stone house. The stone house was completely empty, and there was only a single pathway that led underground. Yang Yi walked down there with her. All along the way, there were divine senses sweeping them incessantly. Around 15 minutes later, a palace appeared within Yang Ye's field of vision. An underground palace. There was an underground palace below the stone house, but it wasn't very large. It only covered an area of a few kilometers. It was completely pitch black, and coupled with the dim lighting in the surroundings, it seemed quite gloomy. Yang Yi noticed that Qian Lankong, who was walking in front of him, had moved behind him now, and Yang Yi naturally understood why. Meanwhile, a dozen black-clothed figures walked out of the palace. Yang Yi glanced at them. There were both men and women amongst them. All of them were wearing masks. Moreover, there were all emperors with thick and deep auras. They were clearly emperors who'd worked hard to gain their current cultivation. The 12 black-clothed figures walked over to Yang Yi and bowed respectfully before speaking in unison. Pavilion Master! Yang Yi nodded slightly, and then he started walking towards the palace. Actually, it wasn't very difficult for him to pose as the Master of Slayer Pavilion, because the Master of Slayer Pavilion had never shown his face. Coupled with Qian Lankong's cooperation, would anyone dare to say that he wasn't the Pavilion Master? But he still didn't dare act carelessly. After all, it was never wrong to be safe. Qian Lankong and the others hurriedly followed behind him. Yang Yi walking ahead as Qian Lankong's voice resounded abruptly in his mind. They are the Hall Masters of Slayer Pavilion, and their status is merely inferior to Feng Xianxia and I. Controlling them is equivalent to controlling the entire pavilion, because they manage many things throughout the pavilion. Of course, their presence isn't necessary, and you can just choose new hall masters. But it would be very troublesome. Yang Yi nodded lightly. Once he walked into the hall, he immediately went over to the end of the hall and sat at the armchair there. Meanwhile, a black-clothed figure stepped forward and said, Pavilion Master, the clans and sects led by the Yuan clan have been repeatedly attacking us for some reason. We've lost over a dozen emperors and over 100 saints. Qian Lankong's voice resounded in Yang Ye's mind. He's Hall Master Zhao. Yang Ye's expression remained calm as he said, Hall Master Zhao, order everyone to hide for now and await my command. Besides that, send our forces to watch those sects and cities. It was naturally not the time to go to war with the Yuan clan and the other powers, because he still hadn't gained full control over Slayer Pavilion. Moreover, he didn't have a clear understanding of the resources and reserves possessed by those clans and sections. So, the important matter at hand was to gain full control over Slayer Pavilion. Understood. Hall Master Zhao bowed slightly to Yang Yi and moved aside. Yang Yi nodded to himself when he saw that, as expected of a trained assassin. He didn't ask questions when an order was given, and he just executed it. If it was the Sword Alliance, while no one would go against me, there would definitely be people who asked for a reason. However, all of that couldn't be helped because the Sword Alliance had just been established, so it naturally couldn't be in such an orderly state as the Slayer Pavilion. Yang Yi glanced at the others and said, "From this moment onwards, besides the Lin clan and the Sky Wave sect, all the other 3 sects and 6 cities are enemies of our Slayer Pavilion. Gather every single bit of information about them and pay constant attention to their movements. Especially the Yuan clan attach most importance to it." "Understand." All of them nodded, but Yang Yi frowned because he noticed that 1 out of the 12 hadn't nodded. His gaze descended onto that black-clothed figure. Based on the outward appearance of that person's figure, it was a female. Meanwhile, that black-clothed woman stepped forward. Chen Longkong's voice appeared in Yang Ye's mind again and warned, "Shui Linlang, someone the Pavilion Master personally brought to Slayer Pavilion. Be careful. She might have noticed something." Yang Yi nodded imperceptibly before his gaze descended onto Shui Linlang. "You have something to say?" "Of course I do." She looked straight at him. "I have a tiny question. Our Slayer Pavilion accepted a job from the Yuan clan and the other powers to assassinate that fellow, Yang Yi. Can be said that we're temporarily working together with them. So, what puzzles me is why the Yuan clan and those other powers have suddenly acted against our Slayer Pavilion." Yang Yi took a step forward and a wave of pressure suddenly appeared here. "You want me to give you an explanation?" She gazed at Yang Yi for a short while before she said, "Why keep the act up? You're not the Pavilion Master." As soon as she finished speaking, a terrifying aura surged out from within her. The aura of a voider. Everyone in the hall was shocked. A wisp of shock flashed through Chen Longkong's eyes. Obviously, she hadn't expected Shui Linlang to actually be a voider. Yang Yi was quite surprised as well. But he remained very calm on the outside and immediately nodded. "That's rare. You've actually attained the voider realm. But do you think that you can fight me upon attaining the voider realm?" She laughed coldly and said, "How laughable! Do you know that I attained the voider realm a long time ago, and it was even under the Pavilion Master's help? Yet now you're very surprised that I'm a voider. But you say that you're not an imposter." Yang Yi shook his head. "I didn't help you attain the voider realm." He naturally couldn't admit it right now. Otherwise, he would lose any chance to take control of the Slayer Pavilion. So, he absolutely couldn't admit it. "You still refuse to admit it?" She laughed coldly and was about to say something. However, Chen Longkong suddenly said, "Shui Linlang, do you think I'm a fake as well?" "Protector Chen, you're definitely not fake." Shui Linlang continued, "But I really don't understand why you've brought someone here to act as the Pavilion Master. Could it be that you want to take control over the Slayer Pavilion? You're courting death." Chen Longkong was about to attack, but Yang Yi stopped her. Yang Yi walked slowly towards Shui Linlang. It didn't take long for him to arrive before her, but she remained completely unafraid and looked him in the eyes. "What? You want to kill me to keep me quiet?" Yang Yi replied, "You would be dead if I wanted to kill you. You say I'm a fake. All right. Then tell me where the real Pavilion Master is." If he could use his sword, he would definitely join forces with Chen Longkong to kill Shui Linlang. But the problem was that he couldn't utilize his sword. If he couldn't, then it would be impossible for their joint forces to kill her in a short period of time. Moreover, even if he utilized his physical strength, it would definitely expose many weaknesses in his disguise. After all, the Pavilion Master of Slayer Pavilion had never fought with his physical strength in the past. If he couldn't annihilate her in an instant, then he would really look like he was trying to kill her to keep her quest. Once the others became suspicious, it would be extremely disadvantageous to his plans to take control of the Slayer Pavilion. Even though it wasn't difficult for him and Chen Lankong to join forces and annihilate everyone here, it wasn't what he wanted. He wanted a united Slayer Pavilion and not one that had split apart, and absolutely not a Slayer Pavilion that had suffered heavy losses. The other hall masters immediately gazed at Shui Linlang when they heard Yang Yi. Shui Linlang's eyes narrowed slightly. I too would like to know where the real pavilion master is. Yang Yi shook his head and said, Kill her! Chen Lankong and the other 11 hall masters were about to attack when they heard Yang Yi. However, Shui Linlang suddenly said, Do you know why I'm aware that you aren't the pavilion master? Because I'm his. His voice, his aura, and even the way he moves and the fine actions he makes. I know all of it. The hall masters immediately stopped and gazed at Yang Yi. Chen Lankong hesitated for a moment and didn't act in the end. She similarly knew that dealing with these fellows wouldn't be a problem if she joined forces with Yang Yi. But if she did that, then the Slayer Pavilion would suffer heavy losses. After all, the hall masters were in charge of everything throughout the pavilion. Moreover, they were extremely strong and had many loyal subordinates. If they were killed, the Slayer Pavilion would fall into chaos for some time. It wouldn't be a problem at any other ordinary time, but the Slayer Pavilion was plagued with troubles now. If internal strife arose within the Slayer Pavilion, then it wouldn't have the strength to resist the Yuan clan and the other powers. Yang Yi said, You say that you're mine? Shui Linlang spoke coldly. Let me correct that. I'm not yours. I belong to the pavilion master. Yang Yi turned to look at the other hall masters. Do all of you believe her? Hall Master Zhao hesitated for a moment before he said, I don't. Because no one in this world would dare to pretend to be the pavilion master. Moreover, there's no reason for Protector Chen to betray the pavilion. However, since Hall Master Shui doesn't believe you, pavilion master, why don't you prove your identity and convince her? A cold smile arose on the corners of Yang Yi's mouth. Even though Hall Master Zhao said that he believed Yang Yi, he wanted Yang Yi to prove his identity. So, he clearly didn't believe Yang Yi. Shui Linlang laughed coldly. Do you dare to prove it? Tell me how I should prove it. As he spoke, Yang Yi clenched his right fist slowly because he didn't mind using force if he really couldn't convince them. Hall Master Zhao said, Everyone knows that the pavilion master possesses the laws of space and can fuse into one with space. So, pavilion master, please utilize it for us. All right? Yang Yi was slightly stunned, and then his right fist relaxed. But he didn't say anything and just remained silent. A cold smile immediately curled onto the corners of Shui Linlong's mouth. What? You don't possess it? Right, how many in the world are capable of comprehending the laws of space? As soon as she finished speaking, Yang Yi suddenly vanished on the spot. At the same time, the space in the surroundings started to ripple swiftly. The laws of space. Shui Linlang was stunned by the sight of this. Meanwhile, Hall Master Zhao and the others gazed at her with displeasure. It didn't take long for Yang Yi to appear once more in front of them. He paid no attention to Shui Linlang, and he just gazed at Hall Master Zhao and the others. Leave and complete what I ordered earlier. Yes. They bowed respectfully and hurriedly left. Only Yang Yi, Chen Lankong, and Shui Linlang remained in the hall. Shui Linlang stared at Yang Yi and said, You're not the pavilion master. Yang Yi nodded. I really am not him. Chen Lankong's eyes opened wide. Obviously, she hadn't expected him to suddenly say that. Even Shui Linlang was stunned. Yang Yi took off his mask and said, I'm the Sword Alliance's master, Yang Yi. Chen Lankong was completely stunned. Yang Yi. Shui Linlong's eyes opened wide. She naturally knew Yang Yi. Because after the Slayer Pavilion accepted the commission to kill Yang Yi, it had immediately started to investigate Yang Yi. Yang Yi, the master of the Sword Alliance, the #1 sword cultivator on the continent, the #1 genius on the continent. She hadn't expected Yang Yi to have actually come to Slayer Pavilion and even pretend to be its pavilion master. Meanwhile, Yang Yi added, Actually, I'm his disciple. Chen Lankong and Shui Linlang were both rendered speechless. They were clearly stunned by what Yang Yi had just said. Yang Yi continued, Miss Shui, you should have investigated me, right? But did you find out anything about my origins? She gazed at Yang Yi for a short while before shaking her head. Yang Yi nodded. You aren't the only one. No one is able to discover my background, because I was fostered in secret by the Pavilion Master. Besides the Pavilion Master, no one else knows my true identity. Besides that, do you know why the Sword Alliance was able to rise so quickly? Do you know why the Sword Alliance could crush the World Devastator cult? Do you know why even the 7 Voiders sent by the Yuan clan and those other powers weren't able to kill me? Do you know why the Pavilion Master went to Dark Hell Continent? Shui Linlang remained silent for a long time before she said, Because the Pavilion Master is supporting you, and he was helping you from the shadows. That was why you were able to rise to prominence in such a short period, and that was why you were able to survive the joint attack of the forces from the Yuan clan and those other powers. Chen Lankong was at a loss for words. Smart. Yang Yi continued. Everyone knows that I have the backing of someone, but they don't know who. Actually, it's the Pavilion Master and the entire Slayer Pavilion. Shui Linlang asked. It was the Pavilion Master who asked you to pretend to be him? Yang Yi nodded. Shui Linlang asked. Why? Yang Yi answered. Because the Pavilion Master can hide in the shadows and do many things. Understand? Shui Linlang asked in a low voice. What does he actually hope to accomplish? Yang Yi shook his head. That isn't something you should ask. Shui Linlang's expression changed slightly. Meanwhile, Yang Yi continued. Miss Shui, you're a smart person, so you should know how to differentiate between what you need to know and what you don't need to know. Once you know things that you shouldn't know, it wouldn't bring any benefits to you. Besides that, even I don't know many things. Now, you just have to cooperate with me. Shui Linlang asked, Can I see him? Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly while a trace of killing intent appeared in its depths. You don't believe me? Shui Linlang shook her head. You possess the laws of space. That proves that you definitely learned it from him. Moreover, unless the Pavilion Master gave the order, Protector Chen would definitely not assist you. I just want to see him. Even though he holds no feelings towards me and has never really treated me as his woman, I would still like to see him. Yang Yi remained silent for a short while, and then he shook his head. I can't contact him. He contacts me when he needs something. However, I'll tell him what you said if he contacts me again. Shui Linlang's gaze dimmed down, and then she nodded. I understand. Since you're his disciple, I'll fully cooperate with you. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and left the hall. Yang Yi heaved a sigh of relief when he saw her leave. He had 2 choices just now. Either kill her or trick her. He'd chosen the latter, because if he chose to kill her, it would definitely cause a great deal of trouble for him. Moreover, he didn't want to lose an assassin at the Voider realm. After all, he needed experts the most right now. Fortunately, he'd succeeded. Meanwhile, Chen Lankong spoke abruptly. Are you feeling very self-satisfied from tricking a woman? Yang Yi turned around and glanced at her. You wanted me to kill her? Chen Lankong spoke indifferently. You're such a shameless fellow who only knows how to trick women. Yang Yi wore his mask and just ignored her as he walked towards the exit. He'd realized that it was impossible to reason with her because she would absolutely not try to reason with him. Meanwhile, Chen Lankong suddenly asked, Where are you going? Yang Yi didn't even look back as he answered, I've been pursued for so long, so it's time for me to kill them instead. The Yuan clan and the other powers were chasing him madly, and they'd almost caused his death on numerous occasions. How could he not avenge that? It's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge, but a petty man takes revenge all day. Yang Yi was naturally no gentleman. Moreover, the 4 clans and 2 sects led by the Yuan clan were out in the open while he was hidden. Could be said that it was the best time to act against them. Meanwhile, Chen Lankong suddenly obstructed his path. The strength of our Slayer Pavilion is capable of going against the 5 clans and 2 sections. Yang Yi replied, I know. Then why are you heading out to kill? Are you trying to sacrifice the entire Slayer Pavilion to take the Yuan clan and those other powers down with us? As she finished speaking, her gaze had become quite cold. Xianxia said, I have no intention to do that. That's exactly what you intend. Qian Lankong interrupted Xianxia and said, You want the entire Slayer Pavilion to drag the Yuan clan and those other powers down with it, so that your Sword Alliance can reap the rewards. Ha ha ha. What a great plan. Xianxia frowned as he gazed at her. Meanwhile, she laughed coldly. What? Want to kill me, and then truly gain control over the Slayer Pavilion? Let me tell you that so long as I'm alive, you can dream of trying to sacrifice the entire Slayer Pavilion for your Sword Alliance. Don't even dream of it. Xianxia gazed at her for a long time before he said, I'd thought that we can work together because we have a common enemy, but now it would seem like I was mistaken. I'm truly unable to work together with you. So, you're going to kill me, huh? She laughed coldly. Kill me and you can truly gain control over the Slayer Pavilion. Moreover, no one will be able to expose your lies. Right? Xianxia said, I admit that I can't take control of Slayer Pavilion without your help, and killing you will indeed allow me to gain control over the Slayer Pavilion. But that goes against my heart. When he spoke up to this point, Xianxia looked her in the eyes and continued, Now, I'll give the Slayer Pavilion back to you, and I'll have no further link to it. You go on your way, and I'll be on mine. We'll have nothing to do with each other. All right? As soon as he finished speaking, he immediately moved around her and vanished into the distance. Meanwhile, Qian Lankong was stunned on the spot. Obviously, she hadn't expected Xianxia to say that and actually give up on the Slayer Pavilion. The Slayer Pavilion. It was a diamond rank power. But Xianxia had given up on it just like that. Is there something wrong with him? Qian Lankong was at a loss for what to do. There was nothing wrong with Xianxia, of course. But he'd still given up on taking control of Slayer Pavilion, and it was an impulsive action. However, what could he do besides that? Kill Qian Lankong? He could. But it was impossible for him to do it in an instant. Moreover, once he entered into battle with her, everyone within Slayer Pavilion would be aware of it. At that time, it would be absolutely easy for Qian Lankong to expose him. Once that happened, he wouldn't just be unable to take control of Slayer Pavilion, he would become a target that Slayer Pavilion pursued. He was naturally not afraid of that, but what about the Sword Alliance? Could it endure being targeted by Slayer Pavilion? Besides that, the main reason he could take control of Slayer Pavilion was Qian Lankong. Even if he could kill her in an instant, he would never do that in order to take control of Slayer Pavilion. After all, a life was only worth living if one lived it with a clear conscience. If he had a clear conscience, he would even kill 1,000,000. But if his conscience couldn't remain clear, then he wouldn't kill no matter what was on the line. Perhaps others would think that was extremely foolish, but that was the principle which he lived by, and it was his path of the sword. Xianxia didn't stay for even a moment, and he immediately left Darkness City once he found out where the Yun clan was located. In the hall within the headquarters of Slayer Pavilion. Not long after Xianxia left, Shui Linlang, Hall Master Zhao, and the others walked into the hall. Hall Master Zhao asked, Protector Qian, where's the Pavilion Master? Qian Lankong spoke indifferently. Do you need something? Hall Master Zhao nodded. The forces led by the Yuan clan have started to launch frenzied attacks against us. Up until this point in time, we've lost 14 hidden bases. During the battles, we lost 17 Emperor Realm Assassins and 72 Saint Realm Assassins. Their forces haven't stopped, and they are still searching for our bases. Moreover, every single attack they launch is led by Voiders. So, our forces are utterly incapable of resisting them. Once they locate a base, our forces are doomed to die or surrender to them. Our forces are surrendering? Qian Lankong frowned. The members of Slayer Pavilion were strictly disciplined, so its members would almost never surrender. Hall Master Zhao nodded. Yes, we wouldn't have lost that many bases of operations if someone didn't betray us, especially when some extremely well-hidden bases were discovered. Protector Qian, the forces led by the Yuan clan have already launched a full-scale attack upon us. We need the Pavilion Master's orders. Qian Lankong fell silent for a long time before she said, Abandon all other bases and go into hiding. Hall Master Zhao glanced at her and remained silent. She frowned slightly in response to this. What? Hall Master Zhao bowed slightly and said, Protector Qian, I'm sorry, but I only obey the Pavilion Master's orders. Please ask the Pavilion Master to issue our orders himself. Qian Lankong spoke in a low voice. Those are the Pavilion Master's orders. Hall Master Zhao shook his head. I want the Pavilion Master to tell me himself. Qian Lankong's face fell. Tell you himself? Yang Yi had left Slayer Pavilion, so where would she look for the Pavilion Master? She fell silent for a short while before she said, The Pavilion Master is busy and has left. Just do as I've said. I'll take responsibility for it. Hall Master Zhao still shook his head. Protector Qian, the Pavilion Master didn't order us to obey you, so we can't obey your orders. Qian Lankong spoke in a low voice. Hall Master Zhao, I told you that the Pavilion Master isn't here. Hall Master Zhao fell silent. Meanwhile, Shui Linlang said, Protector Qian, how about you ask the Pavilion Master to send a voice transmission to us? Hall Master Zhao hurriedly nodded. That works. Qian Lankong glanced at them, and she felt quite helpless in her heart. She knew that while her status was above them, she didn't have the authority to give them orders because of how the Slayer Pavilion system was. It could be said that if she wanted to take control of Slayer Pavilion, then she had to convince the 12 Hall Masters or kill them all. Convince them? Perhaps she would have a chance if she hadn't brought Yang Yi back with her. Yet now it would be utterly impossible to convince them, unless she exposed that Yang Yi was only pretending to be the Pavilion Master. But if she did that, it was very likely for Slayer Pavilion to split apart, and it would be finished if it were to split apart right now. As for killing the 12 Hall Masters, not to mention that she didn't possess the strength to do that, she couldn't kill them even if she could, because the Slayer Pavilion would be instantly finished if she did that. Qian Lankong fell silent for a long time before she said, I'll contact him. As soon as she finished speaking, she withdrew a transmission talisman and crushed it. For the sake of making communication between them convenient, both she and Yang Yi had given each other a trace of their spiritual brand. So, she really could contact Yang Yi. A long time passed, but she received no reply. Meanwhile, Hall Master Zhao and Shui Linlang frowned. Qian Lankong withdrew another transmission talisman and crushed it. It had just shattered when Qian Lankong frowned, because she wasn't able to send the transmission. Yang Yi had erased the spiritual brand she left him. Hall Master Zhao and Shui Linlang exchanged glances, and there was bewilderment in their eyes. Qian Lankong said, The Pavilion Master might have some urgent matters to attend to, so he can't reply. Hall Master Zhao, Hall Master Shui, it's a critical moment for our Slayer Pavilion. We have to act according to the situation at a time like this. So, immediately do as I've said and prevent our Slayer Pavilion from losing even more members. Hall Master Zhao remained silent, and Shui Linlang didn't speak as well. Listen to me for now while I go look for the Pavilion Master. All right? Qian Lankong spoke in a low voice. As soon as she finished speaking, she instantly felt quite unhappy, because she was the one who'd forced Yang Yi to leave. Yet now, she had to go look for him. But she had no other choice. If she didn't bring Yang Yi back, then these fellows wouldn't obey her at all. And if the situation continues, then the Slayer Pavilion would be without a leader and many would start having other thoughts. Hall Master Zhao still remained slightly hesitant, because he only obeyed the Pavilion Master. Besides the Pavilion Master, no one else could give them orders. It was a rule that the Pavilion Master had set in the past. Even though he knew that they should act according to the situation at a time like this, he still didn't really dare to break that rule, because someone had in the past and that person died. Do as Protector Qian has said. For now. Meanwhile, Shui Linlang spoke abruptly. Don't cause the others of our brothers because of such trivial matters. Hall Master Zhao hesitated for a moment longer after he heard Shui Linlang, and then he nodded and left. At this moment, Shui Linlang was a voider as well. If Qian Lankong was included, then it was the orders or two voiders. So, he had an excuse even if the Pavilion Master were to be displeased and wanted to punish him. Once Hall Master Zhao left, Shui Linlang gazed at Qian Lankong and asked, "What exactly is going on?" As far as she was concerned, it was strange for Yang Yi to refuse Qian Lankong's voice transmission. Qian Lankong shook her head slightly. "It's nothing. He went out to deal with something. I'll go look for him now." Shui Linlang said, "Protector Qian, I just want to remind you that Yang Yi is someone the Pavilion Master personally sent to take charge of Slayer Pavilion. I acknowledge him, and I'm willing to cooperate with him. I hope that you don't have any other thoughts, because you should understand that you don't have the authority to take charge of Slayer Pavilion. So, unless Yang Yi or the Pavilion Master give the order, neither I nor the others will obey your orders. This is the last time, and it's the only time." As soon as she finished speaking, Shui Linlang turned around and left. "Damn it!" Qian Lankong clenched her fists tightly, and her chest rose and fell repeatedly from the rage she experienced. She was furious, of course. She was thinking wholeheartedly for the Slayer Pavilion's benefit, but its members actually suspected that she had ill intent. Yang Ye's the fake one. She really wanted to shout loudly and tell them the truth. But the sad thing was that they wouldn't believe her even if she did. A long time passed before Qian Lankong's figure flashed and vanished from the hall. Yang Yi naturally didn't know that Qian Lankong was looking for him. He'd snuck into the Yun clan. "Yang Yi killed my son. He must die. That bitch Yun Banqing as well. I'll make living worse than death for her. I'll make living worse than death for that bastard and whore." Yang Yi had just snuck into the Yun clan when a hysterical roar resounded throughout the sky above the Yun clan, and it was so loud that it could be heard clearly throughout the area. Yang Yi was speechless. "I killed her son?" Yang Yi was slightly stunned, but it didn't take long for him to guess who that person was. Since he was in the Yun clan, the woman was definitely Yun Tianming's mother. Yang Yi glanced at the surroundings before sneaking towards the source of the voice. The main reason he'd come to the Veiled region was to rescue Yun Banqing's mother and younger brother. It was something he'd promised her. Moreover, Yun Banqing would only be able to rest at ease in the Sword Alliance once he did that. Yang Yi attached great importance to Yun Banqing, because while a power needed many experts to grow, it needed many individuals who were talented in management as well. Talent. The Sword Alliance lacked individuals who were talented in management. It didn't take long for Yang Yi to arrive at a pavilion. Meanwhile, a voice resounded from within the main hall. "Bitch! It's all your fault. You're a bitch. And your daughter is a bitch as well. If it wasn't for her, my son wouldn't have died. It's all your fault." Crack! As soon as the woman finished speaking, the sound of bones shattering resounded from within the main hall. Yang Yi frowned and snuck into the pavilion. There was a beautiful woman in palace clothes in the main hall. She had a ferocious expression on her face as she ceaselessly swung a pitch-black iron rod against a woman in plain robed. Every single swing of the rod caused the other woman's body to twitch. Yang Ye's gaze descended onto the woman in plain robes. "Is that Yun Banqing's mother?" While he was still confused, the beautiful woman suddenly stopped and said, "Want to die? Allow me to tell you that I won't let that happen. You should know the Pavilion of Indulgence, right? Haha. Once I capture that daughter of yours, I'll send both of you there. Oh, you might not get any guests with your current appearance. But that's fine. I'll pay them a violet crystal for every time they do you. As for your daughter, Yun Banqing, you don't have to worry about her. I think there'll definitely be many who are willing to have fun with her. Right, that bastard son of yours as well. Don't worry, I won't forget about him. Ha 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 ha." As she finished speaking, the beautiful woman's face was covered in insanity. Yang Yi was about to save the woman in plain clothes once he heard this, but he suddenly frowned and stopped. "Exiner, just kill her." Suddenly, a voice appeared here, and then a middle-aged man in a luxurious robe appeared in front of the beautiful woman. "Avoid her." Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly. "Kill her." The beautiful woman gazed at the middle-aged man and revealed a ferocious smile. "What? Yun Ling? Is it because you don't want her to suffer?" The middle-aged man, Yun Ling, said, "Exener, you've already tortured her to such a state. You should have finished venting, right?" Yun Ling. The beautiful woman suddenly roared with fury. He's dead. Our son is dead. Yet you want me to calm down? How would I do that? If it wasn't for this bitch's daughter, would our son have left the veiled region? He wouldn't have died if he didn't leave. It was all because of that bitch, Yun Banqing. It was that damnable bitch's fault. I'll make living worse than death for her. Living will be worse than death for her. Yunling spoke in a low voice. Yang Yi killed Tianming. Yang Yi. The woman's voice was fierce. Do you think I would let him live? I won't. I'll make him, Yun Banqing, and this bitch suffer the most painful torture on this world. Yunling said, Banqing and Banming are my children. So what? The beautiful woman looked him in the eyes. Yunling, I'm telling you that I'm going to torture them to death. If you try and stop me, I'll bury your entire Yun clan with Tianming. Yunling clenched his fists tightly while a cold glow flickered in his eyes. Meanwhile, the beautiful woman laughed coldly. Yunling, my father and older brother have already gone to Dark Hell Continent. If nothing unexpected happens, it'll take a day at most for me to meet that bitch which you made with this bitch over here. Not to mention that little bitch, you won't even be able to save that son of yours. I'm going to torture them to death. As soon as she finished speaking, she swung the iron rod at the woman in plain robed who was lying on the ground. Crack! The sound of bones breaking resounded once more, and the woman's body twitched. Yang Ye's face fell. He'd thought Yunling would stop her, but he never expected Yunling to actually disregard it. The beautiful woman gazed coldly at Yunling, and then she seemed to be making a show of strength as the iron rod descended once more towards the woman in plain robes. The middle-aged man still had no intention of stopping her. Right when it was about to strike the woman, a cold ray of light flashed. Yunling was the first to react. His expression changed, and he turned around and slammed his palm forward. Bang! The cold ray of light shattered, but Yunling's pupils constricted. He turned around and saw Yang Yi was already behind the beautiful woman in palace clothes, and Yang Ye's sword was pressed against her throat. Yang Yi! Yunling's eyes narrowed slightly while he clenched his fists tightly. At this moment, Yang Yi wasn't disguised as the master of Slayer Pavilion. So Yunling, who'd investigated Yang Yi, had been able to instantly recognize Yang Yi. Yang Yi! The beautiful woman who Yang Yi had restrained was stunned upon hearing his name, and then she instantly seemed to go mad. Yang Yi! Yang Yi! You actually… Hiss! The beautiful woman's right palm flew off into the air. Ah! A shrill cry instantly resounded, but it didn't take long for her to go mad again. Kill him! Yunling! Kill him! Avenge our son! Yang Yi paid no attention to her and gazed at Yunling instead. Bring Yun Banming here. Right now. Yang Yi, you actually… Yunling seemed to want to say something. Meanwhile, a cold ray of light flashed, and then a piece of the beautiful woman's right arm was sliced off. Ah! Her shrill cry resounded once more from within the main hall. But Yang Yi didn't stop. He waved his sword again, and another piece was sliced off. When she noticed that Yang Yi was about to swing his sword again, the beautiful woman hurriedly howled with fury to Yunling. Go release that little bastard. Right now. Hurry! Yunling took a deep and long glance at Yang Yi before he said, Release him! As soon as Yunling gave the order, the guards who had just entered the hall immediately ran out. It didn't take long for a young man to be brought in by two guards. The young man's body was covered in whip marks. He'd clearly been tortured. Fortunately, his limbs were intact and they were just external injuries. Yang Yi withdrew the token Yun Banqing had give him and said, Your older sister sent me. Yun Banming's expression changed at the sight of it, and he said, You! My sister. Is she all right? Yang Yi nodded and said, Help your mother up and leave with me. Yun Banming didn't say anything when he heard Yang Yi. He hurriedly ran over to the woman in plain robes and helped her up. Yang Ye's pupils constricted at the instant she was helped up. The woman had been lying flat on the ground before this, so he hadn't been able to see her face. Now that she'd been helped up, he noticed that her face was actually covered in scars from a blade. They densely covered her face, yet they weren't bleeding. Obviously, they'd been there for long. Most importantly, her eyeballs and eyelids were gone. Yun Banming suddenly screamed, and his eyes instantly turned blood red as he gazed at her. Moreover, a row of blood-red tears seeped out silently from the corners of each of his eyes. No! Yun Banming hugged her tightly while he wailed, "It's all my fault. It's all my fault." Xianxia took a deep breath and said, "Bring you mother along and come with me." Yun Banming nodded while pain covered his face. "Let's go, mother. I'll take you from here. We'll leave the Yun clan and go see big sister." As he spoke, he carried her on his back and walked over to Xianxia. Yun Banming's gaze descended onto the beautiful woman. It was calm, very calm, but Xianxia could sense bone-piercing coldness coming from his eyes. Xianxia glanced at Yun Banming, and then he issued a command in his heart. A Voider Realm sword servant appeared by his side. Yunling's expression instantly changed at the sight of it, and he couldn't help but take a step back. Xianxia issued a command in his heart, and then the sword servant grabbed Yun Banming and vanished. Once the sword servant vanished with Yun Banming and his mother, Xianxia looked up at the middle-aged man and said, "You're the most useless voider I've ever met." "I'm serious." "Of course he is. Ha ha ha." The beautiful woman suddenly started laughing madly. "Do you know? The only reason he was able to attain the Voider Realm was because my father helped him. He would still be an emperor if it wasn't for my Qin clan. Ha ha ha. What a useless man. Ha ha ha." Yunling clenched his fists while gloominess covered his face, but he didn't speak. Xianxia glanced at Yunling and chuckled, "I think you really want me to kill this woman, right?" Yunling gazed at Xianxia and remained silent. Xianxia said, "Actually, I want to kill her as well, but the heavens are benevolent. So, I've decided to give her a chance to live. Now, sever your arms and I'll let her go." Yunling spoke indifferently. "You won't let her go." "I will." Xianxia smiled. "I'll count to 3. I'll let her go if you sever your arms. I'll start now. 1. Yunling gazed at Xianxia in silence. As for the beautiful woman, she was looking at Yunling. She'd calmed down and gone quiet now. 2. Xianxia's eyes narrowed slightly while he exerted a little strength. The sword in his grasp instantly sliced her skin open, and blood seeped out slowly from within. Yunling still didn't do anything. 3. As soon as Xianxia finished speaking, his sword didn't move. He chuckled as he brought the woman out of the hall with him, and then he released her before all the guards of the Yun clan. After that, Xianxia transformed into a ray of light that vanished into the sky. Yunling's face became extremely unsightly at the sight of this. As for the beautiful woman, she remained silent and just gazed coldly at Yunling. In the sky, Xianxia was just about to go after Yun Banming's group when his expression suddenly changed, because 5 formidable auras were approaching swiftly. 5 voiders. Perfect timing. As soon as he spoke, the sword god's seal appeared on his forehead, and then his figure vanished on the spot.